From broken pipe to annoying alternator, and finally timing belt removal. Welcome back to another everyday valued mechanic video. In today's video we have 2016 VW Golf with 1.4 liter TSI engine, and it is due for timing belt replacement. I do not have correct timing tools for this job, but I will show you how I replaced this timing belt with the tools that I had. Without any further ado, let's dive in. I start by lifting car off the ground. This can be done either with the ramp or axle stands. Next we start dismantling air intake, and first item would be this section of intake. It is a little bit stiff, but no match for my Terminator arms. Now we push this clip ever so slightly forward. Using some prying tool, disconnect this breather pipe from the air filter box. Now air filter housing can be lifted from grommets, twisted and pulled. Next we move disconnecting this final piece of intake to the turbo. Now air mass flow sensor has been disconnected, and this pipe from the turbo to the throttle body. It is held by clips on each side, on one side of the pipe on the other side, so just pull it slightly and lift the pipe upwards and it should come off. Once the whole air system is disconnected, now we can move to the battery. You might not need disconnect battery if you do the same job as I'm doing, but to give you more idea how this whole job's been done, I disconnected for more space to see what I'm doing and also give me more space to work. Once the both terminals are disconnected, there's 13mm bolt that holds the battery bracket. Once the bracket is out, the battery can also come out. There's another breather pipe that goes to this bigger breather pipe, and then this breather pipe is held by two bolts on each side of the pipe. One is connected to the turbo and another one to the rocker cover. So once the bolts are disconnected, just pull them, one upward and one on the side, and it should come out. Now we disconnect this section of this cover. Underneath is the water pump belt, also held in by two Torx 30 bolts. Now we disconnect this wiring loom. Once the wiring loom is disconnected, you start pulling the cover off. It is a little bit stiff and it feels like it doesn't come out, but this piece of plastic, it is a little bit bendy, so you can just apply a little force and it should come out. If you're struggling, you can remove the final piece of the air intake to the turbo and it's gonna give you more space. So to do this timing belt, there is a tool that you have to use to lock it, and it looks like this on this side, but my tool is been broken and then it's been grinded flat, so I can't lock the exhaust side of the timing belt or exhaust camshaft, but I will still use it just to lock the intake camshaft, and it's gonna help a little bit with the job. Now the final cover on this side is gonna be the small cover of the intake camshaft. So just put the rag underneath or paper towel just to catch any oil spillages. There will some oil spillages come out. Once you remove those two T30 Torx bolts, you can start slowly prying it off. Typically on all previous cars that I worked, this cover comes pretty easy off, but on this one it was a little bit struggle, but nonetheless is off. Now I'm going to show you how it looks inside. So if we see those 4 cutouts on that camshaft, if you imagine there's like a cross and it should be facing upwards, like you imagine cross, and that will be the correct way to lock it. Now we move to the timing belt side, and I start by disconnecting this expansion tank. It's held by just clips inside. So once you push the clip and you apply small force on the expansion tank, it should lift up like so. Now we disconnect this fuel line and another breather pipe and the timing belt cover. It's held by T30 Torx bolt and 2 clips, 1 on each side. If you can't reach it, you can use a screwdriver or some other prying tool to disconnect it. Now the cover can come off. You can leave this part a little bit later in the job. I just remove it straight away. Now we just remove the tire. Under tray needs to come off. And the bottom engine mount, or in other words dog bone. And we're gonna drain coolant, as I will be disconnecting some coolant pipes. It was a little bit stiff, so just take your time, move it up and forth. Don't apply too much pressure, as they are plastic, they might crack. So take it slowly if it's also stiff on your side. Now we remove the inner wheel arch lining, the lower part. It's held by 6 T20 screws. Four from the inside and 2 from the bottom. It just pulls out. Once the coolant stops dripping, you can connect the pipe back. Now we disconnect the auxiliary belt. Now we need to lock the tensioner, and if you have these pins from the other old tensioners, you can reuse them, or if you don't have them, then also you can put either some bolt or drill bits. It's gonna work same idea. So I have 2 sizes. I'm just gonna test which one is better. This is a little bit loose and this one fits perfectly. Now there's 2, I believe, M8 multi-spline bolts that needs to be removed so the tensioner can come out. And that's the auxiliary belt tensioner off. Now we have to remove this alternator upper bolt completely, and the bottom bolt just loosen up. And again, using some pry tool or this pry bar, you just move alternator away from that bolt where it goes through. So basically that is the engine mount. Now 21 mil bolt, multi-spline mill for the crankshaft pulley, and I put the bolt back inside. Now we can remove this timing belt lower cover, but before we do that, I forgot to put markings on this cover. It has indication where the timing belt should be. So I'm removing here, then I put the bolts back inside, mark it, and then again to unscrew these two lower bolts. So there's two small cutouts on this crankshaft pulley, and they should match this indication on this cover, and that means the number 1 cylinder is at top dead center and it is ready to lock. It's hard to see, but there's two notches on this crankshaft pulley. They should align with those two dots that I put markings. Now once that being marked, we can remove again these two bolts and take this cover off. And another marking on the engine block. Now we can move to the engine mounting. I just crack open this bolt, but not disconnecting it completely. This middle bolt we can disconnect now straight away completely out. Now the expansion tank pipes, the return pipe. Be nice to have some special tool for these pipes. With any prying tool, they all come off. This is the reason why I drain the coolant out, as I'm removing this expansion tank completely to give me more space to work on. Then if you're changing in the same time the water pump, you can do the exactly same thing. Now we start removing engine mount. I start by this 13mm bolt. This is some kind of locating bolt. Then there is two 16 bolts on each side and two 18mm bolts. Before you unscrewing this, I forgot to mention you must support the engine with the trolley jack underneath it. Now we disconnect this fuel line. It's two push clips. You have to press it, push it slightly downwards, press it and lift it up. That's how it comes loose. And this breather pipe also has a push clip. Now we can lift the engine upwards. And there's another bracket from the engine mount to the catalytic converter. It's held in by 13mm bolt and again another M8 multi-spline bolt. And that's the bracket out. And this is how it sits. 13mm goes from the back and the multi-spline on the bottom. Now we can crack loose this final bolt for the engine mount or engine mount bracket, and there's the T30 bolt for this coolant pipe that's also attached to the engine mount bracket. Now you can lower engine all the way to the bottom as much as you can without putting stress on most of the parts on the other side, and the bracket can come out. Oh yeah, well, remove the final bolt at the bottom. It feels like it can't come out. I did a couple jobs without removing it, but I thought this time I'll try to remove it, and it actually came out. So that was something new I learned from this job. As you can see here, I timed up engine before I removed the bracket. Nonetheless, if the bracket's out, you can move engine to the top dead center. And here we can see these two cutouts meant to align with this timing tool. And then the right side of the timing tool should also lock the exhaust, but because on my is broken and it's been grinded out by somebody, I can only I can only lock the intake camshaft. Here I can show you. As it sits flat with the rocker cover, means it's sitting correctly inside, otherwise you're not going to be able to put it. And it should lock that sprocket as well, but my occasion it didn't. Now we separate this breather pipe from this fuel line. The fuel line, we can bend it over, but this breather pipe is from the plastic, and going through the heat cycles it's coming fragile and it always breaks on me. Always. I had like 5 of these, and when I move them, and they always break. The VW, if you buy new pipe, they will give you better quality pipe, and it's not plastic. Now once the engine is locked at the back and the markings at the bottom of the crankshaft is also marked on the top dead center, we can put the markings on the both cams. Remember, if you don't have tools for this job, you put as much as markings for your reference before removing belt completely, so you can always go back to the state how it was removed. Crack the tensioner pulley and the idler pulley. Now the tensioner can come out. Now we can remove the belt and the idler pulley or guide pulley. The original pulley is made from one piece, and I'll show you how this aftermarket or different pulleys come in 3 pieces. So let's see what do we have in the box. So we have new bolts for the tensioner and the crankshaft pulley, the idler pulley or guide pulley, the new belt itself, the sticker for the timing belt records, and tensioner itself. So that's the tensioner bolt. So this notch here, there's a special locating cutout in the cylinder head that should be locked in, and I show you here in this close-up. If you see that notch, it should go inside there. Screw the bolt all the way in, but do not tighten it yet. Now let's compare this guide pulley or idler pulley. They put this plastic, and I thought I'd never seen this before. What they did, the new guide pulley is combined 3 pieces together, so the bolt pulley and this washer or extender. If we look on the original pulley, it's just one piece and you can't remove bolt with that ease off. So as we see here, there's a rubber O-ring seal or O-ring that holds bolt in place and has a cutout in that extension. So slightly different design, but basically both they do exactly the same job. So the guide pulley is 40 Newton meters of torque to be tightened. Now we can put the belt inside. This is a little bit tricky part. If you just watch how I'm doing, I'll try to comment it. So I have these clamps, I clamp the belt so it doesn't slip off when I work on the other pulleys, and we're using 12mm multi-spline bolt. As we can see here, the timing belt moved, and I know it moved on the exhaust side as the intake side is locked in. So I move it back to the position so the markings aligned. And when it's in the position, you can put also some clamp or self-grip pliers, but don't grip too much. As long as it holds, it's not gonna move. And now you can see the bolt markings in the correct position. Now we put the rest of the belt inside. I had difficulties to put the crankshaft, the belt on the crankshaft, so I moved the belt slightly outwards. It's gonna give me that extra little bit space to put it on the crankshaft. So for that I needed to unscrew the tensioner a little bit back out. Now the belt can go more easily on the crankshaft. Sometimes it goes straight away, sometimes it takes a little bit force. But something to remember, you always have to be tension on the right side. So the opposite side of the tensioner, and the loose side should be on the tensioner side. Now we can push the belt back inside, correctly sitting on the all pulleys. Locate the tensioner to the notch I showed you earlier. Basically at this stage the belt's not gonna go anywhere, so you can remove the clamps and screw the bolt back inside, but not tight it yet. So here we can see, to tension the belt, there's an arrow on these tensioners that indicates which way the tensioner should be tensioned. So I have this from that timing tool. I had this tool to tension it, but again, if you don't have, you can just use 30mm spanner and it's gonna do exactly the same thing. Here we can see where the tensioner should sit correctly. Now when the tensioner is tensioned correctly, you can tie that bolt, and the spec for that bolt is 25 Newton meters of torque. So you can just snip it a little bit so the tension doesn't go back, and then use the torque wrench to torque it correctly. I over torqued it to 28, but it's not massive difference. And here we can see all the markings that we put earlier. So this is on the intake side, we can see they're bang on. Now they're on the exhaust side. I couldn't put the camera more left as there was a pipes another piece, but in real life it was looking correct. Now the crankshaft pulley also in the same spot. Now we can remove this locking device from the intake side. Once the lockers are removed, I use this long extension and the big ratchet to turn the engine twice 360 degrees to make sure the all markings align in exactly same place as I remove them. And to pay attention here, also we can see here the bolt camshafts is in correct position. Tensioners also where it's supposed to be. As we can see, the arrow should align with that cutout, and the crankshaft pulley. Now we lower engine and get all the way to the bottom, and we put this engine mounting bracket inside. Again, a little bit fiddly, but it is doable, and I'm really happy for that, as I did couple timing belts, just leave it hanging there and it just while removing it makes life so much easier. So once you get past first, I would say, obstacle that you feel it was holding it, you can lift the engine upwards, and then again you have more space now to move the bracket into its place. And take the first bolt you have at hand to secure it in place. In my situation, it was this coolant pipe, that T30 bolt, and the bottom bolt for this engine mounting bracket. The bolts for the bracket are different sizes, so the two longer bolts are the top and the middle, and the shorter bolt is at the bottom. So once you have all three bolts inside and located, you can tie them. Standard ratchet doesn't go inside there, so I have this flexi head ratchet. It helped me a little bit, but you can use spanners or any other tools to tie those bolts. Now we can put this bracket back on. And basically from this point is everything what we did before in reverse. So now it is a good chance to put this cover, as a lot of pipes and a lot of things is out of the way. So 2 clips on each side and that T30 bolt. The engine mount itself, 2 18mm bolts. Now we can lower engine slightly downwards so it's aligned correctly with the chassis. And we can put these 2 16mm bolts. And this 13mm bolt as well. Tight all the bolts. You can use the electric tools, but after I recommend to double check them with the ratchet or any hand tools. Fuel line. And this broken pipe that broke earlier, what I did, remove the clamp, and I put just the sellotape around it, or isolation tape, as there's no pressure, no coolant, nothing, it's just air passing through that pipe, so it is good as new. As I mentioned earlier, the VW has upgraded that pipe, and if you're gonna buy a new pipe, they're gonna give you a rubber pipe rather than the plastic. Expansion tank can clip inside. Connect all these clamping pieces. The coolant level sensor. And these hose clamps. Now we assembled the water pump side or gearbox side of the engine. Started by putting this water pump belt cover. This is again a little bit fiddly, but a little bit persuasion, you can put it inside. 2 30 Torx bolts. And the wiring loom back inside. This intake camshaft cover. And again 2 T30 Torx bolt. Now this breather pipe to the rocker cover and to the turbo, and one bolt on each side. Again, T30, which is very nice that the all bolts are exactly the same. But nonetheless, pay attention, because sometimes they can be different sizes. Now this air pipe or boost pipe, the pressure sensor, intake pipe, the airbox, breather connected back inside, and push it back on its grommets. And finally, this piece of section, there is cutouts and notches how it's supposed to sit, so pay attention. These markings should be facing upwards, and there's a cutout on this side that also should align. Now the battery can go inside. Negative terminal, positive terminal, and the battery bracket that is held in by 13mm bolt. Let's cover that. Now we move to the bottom. This final bolt for the engine mount bracket, and now with this alternator that give me a hard time. This is sped up to 600%, so you can imagine how much time it took me to push it inside. So I struggle at the very beginning, but then where the bolt goes inside there at the top, I use a sandpaper just to sand it down a little bit, the oxidation, and that helped me a bit to push the alternator back inside, but this took me some beating. I used the mirror to make sure the bolt is aligned and I have not went over. And then many years later, I finally managed to get it inside past first side. It still doesn't go on the other side, so a couple more hits to get it in place. As I felt it start catching the thread, I apply a little bit pressure and it actually went inside. But this took me so much time. If the alternator is completely out, you can move. There's a slider on the other side of the alternator. You could slide it a little bit outwards before you put the alternator inside, and that helps a lot. But because I didn't remove alternator, I had this. Now the timing belt lower cover can go inside this tensioner, and the crankshaft pulley with the new bolt. If you see the cutout on this crankshaft pulley, some pulleys they has this locking pin or locating cutouts, so make sure you sit it correctly. As mine didn't have it, but I still checked it as I had before when one mechanic didn't know and he put it, and once we started the car, there was coming horrible noises from this side of the engine, and it took us a little bit time till we figured out what's happening. Now the auxiliary belt can go inside. Take this locking pin out and let go the tensioner. Now again, turn the engine a couple times just to make sure the belt's sitting nicely and the engine turns easily. Well, not easily, you should have some back pressure. The wheel arch lining, the dog bone, and the under tray. I disconnected dog bone as when we were lifting engine upwards and downwards, it helps you lift it higher up and lower down. As if you're not removing it, you're not going to be able to take out that engine mount bracket. Tire can go back on, wheels, and the fresh coolant. This engine don't have any bleeding system, so just top it up, wait till it goes down, top it again, wait till it goes down, top it again. It took me 3 times to top it up overall, and once you top it up on the 3rd time, I'll leave it on level and start the engine. Leave engine running for a while, and as soon as you start getting warm air, you can put the cap back on. And on this we have come to an end of another everyday value mechanic video. Thank you all for watching. If this video was helpful, I would appreciate thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos on car repairs, subscribe to the channel as more videos on the way. Your valued mechanic out.